The Hands That Healed, a Bedtime Story, from Matthew, chapter 9. The village of Capernaum slept under a quiet sky, its homes nestled like pebbles beside the sea. The stars shimmered above, and the wind whispered gently through the palms. But not everyone was asleep. In one small home, with a roof made of clay and branches, 4 men stood silently in the moonlight. One of them, a man named Eli, lay still on a mat, unable to walk. "He's sleeping," whispered one of his friends. "No," said another, softly placing a hand on Eli's shoulder. "He's waiting." For word had spread like wind over the hills. Jesus of Nazareth had returned to Capernaum, and wherever he went, people were made whole. Through the roof, as dawn broke, the streets filled with footsteps. Men and women, children and elders, all made their way to the house where Jesus was teaching. Inside, the room overflowed. The windows were full of faces. The door stood open, but there was no space left to enter. That didn't stop Eli's friends. They carried him up the narrow outer stairs, carefully, slowly, until they reached the roof. There, under the rising sun, they began to pull away the branches and clay. Dust floated in golden beams. Below, the people looked up in surprise, and then, through the opening, they lowered Eli's mat. Jesus looked up, and his eyes met theirs. He smiled, not at the effort, but at the faith. "Take heart, son," he said gently. "Your sins are forgiven." Some scribes in the crowd stirred. "Only God can forgive sins," they murmured. But Jesus turned to them, his voice calm and sure. "Which is easier?" he asked. "To say, 'Your sins are forgiven,' or 'Get up and walk'?" Then turning back to Eli, he said, "Rise, take your mat, and go home." And Eli, who had not walked in years, stood up, slowly, steadily, joy rising in him like morning light. The people gasped. Then they praised God with whispers of awe. A new disciple. Later that day, Jesus walked by the tax collector's booth. A man sat there. His name was Matthew. Most people avoided him. He was a tax collector, seen as greedy and dishonest. But Jesus looked at Matthew and saw not a title, but a heart. "Follow me," he said. And Matthew stood, just like that. He left his table, his coins, his past, and followed the one who called him. That night, Matthew invited Jesus to his home. They sat at a long table with other tax collectors and people the world called sinners. There was laughter and quiet stories, and faces beginning to believe in mercy. The Pharisees, seeing it all, scoffed. "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors?" Jesus, overhearing, replied gently, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have come to call not the righteous, but sinners." The daughter and the Hemaz. Jesus left the house. A man named Jairus ran to him, falling at his feet. "My daughter," he said breathlessly, "she's dying. Please, come and lay your hand on her, and she will live." Jesus nodded and followed. But the crowd was thick. People pressed close. In that crowd was a woman, pale and tired, who had been bleeding for 12 years. She had spent all she had trying to be healed. Still, she suffered, alone, unseen. But she had heard of Jesus. If I only touch the hem of his cloak, she whispered, I will be healed. She reached through the crowd, trembling, and touched his robe. At once, she felt whole. Jesus stopped. He turned, looking gently into the crowd. Who touched me? He asked. The woman came forward, her eyes filled with tears. Jesus met her gaze and said, Take heart, daughter. Your faith has healed you. And she was no longer just a woman in the crowd. She was known. The little girl wakes. At Jairus' home, mourners stood outside. The girl was gone, they said. It was too late. But Jesus said, She is not dead. She is only sleeping. They laughed at him. Still, he entered. And there, in the quiet room, he took the girl's hand. Little one, he said softly, get up. And she opened her eyes. Like morning breaking, like hope returning. Her parents wept, holding her close. Outside, the sun had dipped low, painting the sky with lavender and gold. The two blind men see. As Jesus continued his journey, two blind men followed, calling out, Son of David, have mercy on us. Jesus led them inside, away from the noise. Do you believe I can do this? He asked. Yes, Lord, they answered. Then he touched their eyes and said, According to your faith, let it be done to you. And they could see. Colors flooded their world. Green leaves, blue sky, golden light. And their first sight was the face of the one who had healed them. The harvest is ready. That evening, as the stars returned to the sky, Jesus looked out over the people, so many in need, so many hearts waiting. He said to his disciples, The harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. Ask the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into his field. And in the gentle twilight, hope spread like light on water. And so, dear one, as you lie beneath your covers tonight, imagine the gentle hand of Jesus lifting the sick, calling the forgotten, healing with just a word. Know that you are never unseen. Your heart, your hurts, your hopes, they are known. And the one who calmed storms and opened eyes walks quietly beside you, even now. Close your eyes. Rest. Let the peace of the healer fill your dreams, and sleep, knowing that his hands still bring life, and that you are always, always loved.